Welcome to the CEO Project Podcast, where Jim Schlexer, author of the best-selling book, Great CEOs Are Lazy, and the founder of the CEO Project, provides ideas and tools to help CEOs of mid to large-sized companies grow and optimize their businesses. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everybody, to the CEO Project Podcast. My name is Jim Schlexer. I am your host, and we're going to have a little bit of fun today. So our guest today is, funny enough, started as a scream queen actress. I mean, literally the horror films that I lay awake at night shaking after I would go and watch, all the way back to Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. But she has morphed that into helping people with PR, and more particularly helping people with not getting the booking, but what do you do once you get the booking? How do you behave? How do you engage? How do you speak? So any of us that think that maybe we got a few rough edges, or we're not completely comfortable in front of the camera or a podcast or an interview, this is the person you want to talk to. Luana, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for the wonderful introduction.
I'm not sure I saw any of your movies. I went and looked at your IMDb and I didn't unfortunately recognize any. I'm sorry to say that. I apologize.
There's one on Amazon. Look, I act for fun, okay? I do it for fun. I'm not about to say that I'm in any like of these blockbuster movies or anything like that. But if you go onto Amazon Prime, there's no such thing as zombies. That's the best bet.
Got it. And were you a zombie, or you were somebody whose brain got eaten by a zombie?
I was indeed a zombie.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I know who to call when the zombie apocalypse comes, because you'll know exactly what to do. So good.
Oh, they're such great fun.
Yeah. So how did you go from that to PR, and then even more helping people with all the things around PR? How did you get to that place? It's an interesting journey, I think.
Yeah, well, I started acting full time, and that is a very challenging thing to do. It's very challenging to earn money as an actor.
When anybody tries to be an actor, I go, "How are your waitering or waitressing skills?" Because it's a hard job.
You were not far off there. So what I did was I worked for an agency. And I got trained up in PR. And as soon as I started, I just loved it. Now, it was a PR agency for actors, and I was getting them booked on magazines, television, and all of this stuff. And I got so excited about it. I absolutely loved it. And in the end, I just decided that that's what I wanted to do as my main thing, because having to rely on the money from acting took away my passion for the acting, because I found that I was taking jobs depending on what the pay was rather than what was lighting me up. And I didn't want to do that. I mean, now I only do whatever I want to do. So I started working for this agency and I absolutely loved it. But, and this is a very, very big but, a little while into the role, it became apparent that our values didn't quite match. And so reluctantly, I left, which was actually a really hard thing to do because I did love it so much. Now, at that point, I didn't see going into PR myself as an option. It just didn't occur to me. It just didn't occur to me. So I opened my own acting school. That did pretty well. And I opened my own online business program. It was called Passion to Freedom. Now, there was a module in Passion to Freedom that was all about media. And I found I didn't want to talk about anything else. And that's when it clicked. Look, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Oh, that's great. Very cool. I'm not to put, we're not going to throw anybody to the bus, but ethical variance from your standards to theirs, like in what area? Because people run into this occasionally, and is it a big enough thing that I should leave? Like, I don't completely agree with what's going on, but like, how big was this sort of ethical disagreement? Because that happens to people occasionally.
A lot of embellishing and hyping things up to be more than what they are. And that's why, with Dauntless PR now, transparency is our absolute highest value. Like we will never hype up or embellish. We will tell people exactly what it is that they're getting, how
Got it.
it's being got. We're very transparent with everything. So
Got it.
that's what I just couldn't buy into it. And as
Yeah.
much as I loved it, I left. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. I think people experience that sometimes where the company's saying things and you go, like, I know that's not true.
It's hard when you love the job.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Um, so you went into your own agency. You found that media was the thing you loved. Where'd you go from there?
So I started off just me and my assistant,
Mhm.
and we would just get people booked onto media. And then we rebranded as Dauntless PR in 2021. And this is when I thought, right, I'm going to take it to the next level now. I had my knowledge and my contact that I'd built. And I thought, what would happen if I got a team of experts who specialize in different areas, who have their own contacts that they can bring into the business? And so that's what I did. And that's when we became Dauntless PR. That's when we really found our feet and what we were
Mhm.
all about. And that's when we really took it to the next level.
Yeah. Good. So help me with what kind of services you offer. Like if I'm a CEO saying, I don't know if I need to work with this woman or not,
So we help. So
help me
it's
with that.
Yeah, so it's very specific what we do.
Okay.
We help people who want to build a personal brand. So a CEO who wants to be the face of their business. And then they promote their products, their services, their books, their apps, whatever they want off the back of that personal PR.
Okay.
So we don't just promote, the product or the service. We very much get deep into who that person is so that people can connect with them and really resonate with them. They
Mm,
share their stories, their personal stories as well as their professional stories, so that people can really find out who the human is
mhm.
behind the brand, because that is what binds us humans together. That's what attracts the right people to them and also repels the people who aren't supposed to be in their space.
Right. Interesting. So what kind of products or services is that an ideal strategy? Because it's not for everybody. I had one business we made instrumentation and controls for industrial processes. I'm not
I don't
sure.
even know what that is, so
My
I
my
wouldn't be
point
the right one to help you with that.
my point is like I don't know that a personal brand would have helped that business at all. It was very technical and very, specific. So what areas would one want to be in that this would be something they should consider?
So people with a powerful message that goes with whatever that product or whatever that service is.
Hmm.
So, ideally, let's say somebody has developed a product that helps somebody with their health, then they would go into the media and they would talk about how that product has helped them or
Mm,
how they've helped somebody to overcome a certain issue. Like, we work with a lot of experts in health, in fitness, in relationships, in law, in all of these different areas. But it's not just having a product or a service, it's having a message and being an expert on a topic that goes along with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And immediately thought of weight loss when you talked about it, or some of these
That's it.
people that promote like wealth programs.
That's it.
I
Yeah.
had
Well,
nothing. I was living in a cardboard
leadership,
box.
business,
Yeah, got it.
finance, all of that. Yeah.
Fabulous. Is it appropriate for like a corporate CEO to do this?
We don't work with corporate. That
Ah,
isn't our strong point. Would it work for a corporate? Absolutely. We're not the right ones for that. We're more for, the personal brands.
interesting. Yeah, because I mean, there are some companies where the CEO is very in front of the brand. I mean, they are out there. Think about
Yes,
Zuckerberg on Meta, or some of the Tim Cook at Apple, or I mean, they are in
that's
front of
it.
the brand in a very big way and a kind of a lightning rod, right?
Yes, so we're for the people who want to be in that spotlight, who feel the pull. They want to be the face of their company or
Hmm.
companies. They might have multiple companies, but we do have clients, who have several different companies, and they want to be they want people to know who they are, not
Yeah.
just their business, but who they are as a person.
So thinking about this though, it does create a liability. And the company I'm thinking of is Berkshire Hathaway with Warren Buffett, right? He's such a big figure as an investor and a buyer of companies. But he's getting older. He's still around, but someday he won't be around, and yet he's hugely affiliated with the brand. Is thinking about succession and longevity of your what you create, is it negative to that? And how have you seen people navigate that process?
So how to navigate that is to introduce somebody else,
Okay.
so that they start building trust and connection with somebody else who's lined up to take over in that role. So it's a very gradual process and something that needs to be planned. So it's certainly not for everybody, like
Yeah.
you said, it is for the person who wants that, who wants to be in the spotlight. And there definitely needs to be an exit plan if that's the goal at the end of the day.
Got it. The like the one that didn't work when I was a young kid, there was a ice cream brand, Carvel. They had stores around the US. And
Okay.
this gravelly voiced owner, Tom Carvel, named after the place, he talked like this and very distinctive, did all his ad commercials. He died and like they had nothing to replace it. And
Oh,
compare that to Purdue, which is a chicken company here in the States. Frank Purdue was all out in front, and now his sons have taken over that lightning rod sort of visible role. So they did it well, and one that didn't do it well, and
there we go.
and it
Yeah.
damaged the brand because he hadn't teed up anybody else. Carvel.
Yeah, 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 that's the thing. If somebody is well known as the face of their brand, they're very, very connected to it. And what they
Right.
do or what happens with them will absolutely, have an effect on the business.
Honestly, if I was a board member and the CEO came forward and said, "Look, I'm going to try to become the brand lightning rod for this company," I'd be hesitant
What would
because
be your concerns?
what if their performance wasn't up to snuff? How could I get rid of them if they were the face of the brand? Bob was great, but we fired Colonel Sanders or whoever, he didn't work out. We got rid of him. How do you do that once they're the face of the brand, So
Very valid concerns.
yeah, I
So,
would.
what companies sometimes do is they
Mhm.
have somebody who's the face of the brand, and they're not necessarily the person who's calling the shots behind the scenes.
Interesting. Yeah, I've seen
But
that.
sometimes they just don't, sometimes they see the value of having a strong face of the brand, but they don't want to do that, or
Yeah.
like they might, not everybody wants to be in the spotlight, that's the thing. And I'm very much for not trying to convince anybody who doesn't want to be in the spotlight to get into the spotlight. That
Yep.
doesn't work. It
Yeah.
only works when people are excited about it and they want it.
My first question would be, did you ever do any school plays or or drama or glee club or anything like that? If they go, "Oh yes, and I loved it." You're for us, right? You probably don't mind being out front. So,
That's it.
so when you run into somebody and they say, "Look, I think I want to do this," where are the areas where you see people really don't get it, that you really have to do a bit of work to get them up to snuff? Where are the sort of weaknesses that many of us can come to the table with? The most common that you run into, maybe.
So the most common ones that we find, because we work with a lot of people who are already established speakers and they are
Hmm.
great on stage, and those skills do absolutely carry across into media. But sometimes they can get stuck on, like for stage, you'll have your story and you tell it a certain way and you say it in the same way today
Yep.
as you did the next day, but you cannot do that in media because one day
Hmm.
you might be on a TV interview where you have a 3 minute spot and the next you might be on a podcast that's for an hour. So you have to get used to breaking the habit of not telling your story in the same way and not answering questions in the same way. It all depends on what that platform is and who the audience is. So it's the little nuances. So we often find that people tend to think that they don't need that much help because they know that they're great speakers and they are
Hmm.
phenomenal. But then once they've done some media training, they always say to us, I had no idea how much I needed this.
Mm-mm. And I think the advice is the same for interviews, that you have small stories that you know how to tell. related to particular topics, right? So I did this with my son. I said, look, we came up with three stories that demonstrated certain skills for this interview he was going on. And I said, I don't care if they ask what the weather is. You're going to answer with one of these stories. So we taught him the pivot and all that. And he came out of the interview. He says, yeah, we talked for 45 minutes about story number one. I'm like, great, all good. He got the job, by the way. But I think the same thing's true in an interview. You have 10 or
Completely.
12 really quality stories that drive your point forward. You
That's
almost don't
it.
care what they ask, and you're going to go to your stories, right? Like the politicians do,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's always giving what they're asking for, not trying to. I'm very much all about, no transparency. Like I would never evade a question. I
Mm.
would never try and swiftly change the subject or pretend that I know something that I don't, and I try and get this across to everybody. It is okay to say that's not a topic I'm knowledgeable about,
Wow,
or that's not
in
my
an interview,
area.
you would do that. You'd say, "Look, just I can't go there because I don't know."
If it's not, but I would explain why.
Okay.
I would say that's not my area, and I wouldn't want to, give an answer that I'm not 100% certain of. I wouldn't just say, oh, I'm not answering that, or no
Yeah.
comment, or, something
No
like that.
comment. Like you're in a lawsuit. Um,
Yeah.
that is really fascinating. We see mostly politicians do it. They go ask a question about peace in the Middle East, and they go, peace in the Middle East is really important, but what people are really worried about is taxes. And then they answer their tax story, right? You're like, you didn't answer the question at all. And
The
I
segue.
I agree. It's so frustrating, right? Well, there's a reason they asked. It's an important issue, and you didn't answer it. And
Yeah, yeah. So if, I always say if you don't answer, always give a genuine reason why.
yeah, but I think this is down to your preparation, right? Let's think up the 20 questions you're going to get asked, and let's
Yeah.
build reasonable answers for those 20 questions. If they ask question 21, you're going to have to figure out what to do. But the first 20 we've got, and that gets you a long ways home, I think.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
I had a guy on the podcast a while back, and he was a good speaker, but I just don't let people do that in the podcast. So I'd ask him questions he hadn't really expected, and he vapor locked. He couldn't answer the questions. He just because he had to your point, he did a pattern. He did it the same way every time. I took him out of his pattern, and it was unfortunate. I was didn't feel very good for him, but um, that's life. You don't want that.
Yeah.
What
We
do you?
we do some sorry.
No, go, please.
I
Go.
was just going to say, like, we use an acting technique for this, actually. It's called the Dauntless Roast.
Oh.
And we give them an experience of being interviewed, but we make it a really challenging interview. Like,
Mm.
we give them the interview from hell. It's not designed to mimic any actual interview, it's designed to really push them, depending on what that individual needs. But
Wow.
it's designed to really push them so that when they go out there, they are able to think on their feet because you can't always predict what's going to
Mm.
happen in an
Yep.
interview. So, once they've done that a few times, then they get, it's just improvisation like in acting.
That's fabulous. Wow. This is the when did you stop beating your wife question? There's no answer to that question, right? Um, and what do you do when it's just going terribly wrong? It's just gone completely pear-shaped. The interview is off. You haven't hit your points. You're not vibing with the what do you do as a candidate, somebody who's trying to get themselves out there, and it's gone completely wrong? What do you do?
Honestly, I would just keep trying my best.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I really would just keep trying my best. I remember one podcast in particular, I won't name it or anything, but there was so many technical issues, not on my side, but on their side. And you could tell that they were so stressed and flustered because their tech wasn't going right. But I just tried to do my best. We
Mhm.
can't control what happens with other people. We can just control what we do. So I just kept calm and I just kept doing my best. And, it wasn't a great interview. I couldn't hear half the time, but
Oh,
at least I
oh,
gave it my best shot.
oh gosh, that is a tough interview. Now, how do you people you talked about speaking on stage and in front of groups, and I think CEOs in particular do that a fair amount,
Yes.
small, medium, and large groups. But camera is so different because you don't get that feedback that everybody loves from an audience. Oh, they're smiling, they're nodding. Okay, I've got them in the right place. How do you transition somebody to screen?
Something really right. I'm going to give a little tip now because
Love
I've
it.
got a very good tip for
We
this.
we take free tips all day long. Yes.
Think about who your ideal client is, or who the ideal person who you want to be listening to your interview is, and imagine that they are the only listener.
Okay. And
So
and so
sorry,
go.
I always spend some time just before I jump on, just thinking, okay, who am I speaking to who's within their demographic, like within their audience? Who is it that I'm actually speaking to here? And then I think of a real person. And that's something that works really well for me because instead of thinking, oh, like thousands of people are going to be listening to this,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like this one person's going to be listening, and it makes me feel a lot calmer. It makes me a lot like know what I want to say a lot more, it gives me the best intentions.
hmm I love that. I
Um,
love that one. That's great advice.
But other things, differences from stage and screen are on stage. You need to be larger than life because your audience is there. And naturally, I am larger than life. It's taking everything in me right now not to be waving my arms around.
Oh, wow.
Because
Well,
for screen, the tiniest movement is picked up and amplified.
interesting. And that's true. Like, not all CEOs are extroverts. Many of us are introverts or like sort of right on the border. And so to be extroverted, we've got to energy up and drink coffee and do all the things. It's not a natural state. It really isn't. And you're
Totally.
you're
And
talking
I'm
about
not
going to 10, not to 2, to 10. I mean, that's hard.
Look, I'm not I had to train myself to be able to do things like this. When I was a kid, I could hardly talk unless I was with friends, close friends and family. My throat would just close up. I had such bad social anxiety. Like
Wow.
I get it.
I'm going to say you've overcome that.
Just a bit, yeah.
Well done. Well done.
But
That's
look, that's why I wanted to start doing this. It's been a huge personal development journey for me because I wanted to overcome that. Like, even as a child, I knew that I was born for the spotlight and I couldn't make sense of that. I didn't know why, because it was the complete opposite of who I was at the time. So my whole life has been basically putting myself into scary situations on purpose so
Yep.
that I can gradually get over that and get over that. And I still do it to this day. Like if something scares me, I run towards it.
I think that's actually fabulous advice. The phrase I use is I won't be controlled by my fears. And so
100%.
I don't like heights, for example, but I will go do the heights because I will not be controlled by my fears. So you
Same.
got to dive in. Yeah, I think that's great advice for anybody who's sort of, well, I don't like public speaking, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. The best joke I heard about speaking is they've ranked fears, and the fear of dying, obviously, very, very high. Above that, the only one above that is the fear of public speaking. And so
Heard that.
but the joke goes, you'd rather be the person in the box than the person giving the eulogy, right? Which is crazy to think of. So,
It is.
Luana, what didn't I ask that I really should have asked? What did I miss that I really should have asked you about what you do?
Well, I think something really important with PR at the minute is that it's something that's more important than ever because of the rise in AI.
Hmm.
So AI has absolutely changed the game in how people search for businesses. So now they're more likely to prompt. AI isn't looking at social media, it's not looking at blogs on websites. Well, it is to a minimum, but what it's really looking at is for third party validation. So these are the media features. So what that means is if somebody isn't in the media, then the AI can't find them to be able to recommend them. And so it might recommend somebody else who maybe isn't as good.
But they're more visible.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? Like it kind of sounds unfair because people tend to think, well, I'm the best at this thing, so surely my work will speak for itself. But that isn't the case.
Right.
It's who is the most visible and who can stand out the most with what they do a
Wow.
lot of the time.
Interesting. You know, the it used to be, and they modify the search engine protocols all the time, but it used to be that if you had a high credibility source and it's been there and you link to it, right? So a Wall Street Journal or Financial Times interview you did, high credibility, it links back to you and it drives searching. But it's sort of in the same idea, but more on an individual level, you personally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, this is great. But if somebody wants to work on their personal brand and they want to kind of grow their business using that technique and work with you specifically, what would be the best way to get a hold of you, Luana?
I'm on social media, Luana Ribeira. I'm all over the place. Or email hello@dauntlesspr.com.
Love it. I mean, if you had said you weren't on social media, I would have had a real problem with this entire interview. Well, this has been charming and wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do
It's been
appreciate it.
really nice talking with you today.
Absolutely. And for those of you who listened, we'll see you next time on the CEO Project Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening to the CEO Project Podcast. We'll see you next time. Be sure to subscribe to get all the future episodes and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.